At the Billionaire's dinner, no one expected silence to carry weight. The sound was small, not loud enough to stop the room, not sharp enough to turn heads, yet it changed everything. At the Billionaire's dinner, surrounded by polished smiles and practiced laughter, a single vibration moved through the table. Phones were meant to stay silent here. Assistants waited outside. Emergencies belonged to other people, but her phone buzzed anyway. Once. The man at the center of the table continued speaking. His voice carried confidence, measured and calm, the kind of tone people trusted without question. Glasses hovered mid-air as he spoke. Heads nodded in quiet agreement. No one noticed her at first. She did not reach for the phone. She did not shift in her seat. Years of stillness had trained her well. She kept her hands folded, her expression steady, her posture unchanged. The phone buzzed again. This time, something shifted. The man paused. Not fully, just enough. His sentence slowed. His eyes flicked toward her side of the table before returning to the room. The moment passed quickly, yet it left a mark. Silence stretched between words. The city glowed beyond the glass walls, far below them. Power lived in this room. Money had shaped every choice here. Deals were sealed with nods, not signatures. People waited for him to speak before they laughed. And yet, something fragile had cracked. She stood. The chair moved softly across the floor. No one gasped. No one asked questions. Control remained intact, at least on the surface. She walked away from the table without hurry. Behind her, conversation resumed. Smiles returned. The dinner continued. But the rhythm had changed. That single vibration had done what no argument ever did. It introduced doubt. Have you ever sat beside someone admired by everyone, yet felt unseen? Not ignored in a loud way, not dismissed with cruelty, but slowly placed outside the center of their life. You smile when expected. You listen when spoken to. You learn how to take up less space without being asked. From the outside, everything looks perfect. Luxury, comfort, security, a seat at the table others envy. Yet inside, something feels hollow. This story begins there, not with shouting, not with betrayal caught in the open, but with quiet distance growing between two people who once shared everything. Tonight's dinner was meant to honor success, a room full of influence, people dressed in confidence and calm ambition. He belonged here. Everyone could see that. She did too, at least on paper. But papers do not measure presence. They do not measure warmth. They do not measure how often someone chooses you when no one is watching. If you have ever loved someone whose life grew louder while yours grew quieter, this story is for you. If you have ever wondered whether patience equals loyalty, stay with us. If you have ever questioned whether love should require shrinking, you are in the right place. Welcome back to Lord of Hearts. This is where stories speak about dignity, where love is tested by success, where silence carries meaning. Before we continue, take a moment. Like this video if you believe love needs presence. Comment where you're watching from. Subscribe to Lord of Hearts for stories that choose meaning over noise. Because what happens next is not about wealth. It is about what happens when silence finally speaks. Luxury has a way of hiding absence. In rooms like this, everything looks complete. The lighting is warm. The voices are controlled. Nothing feels out of place. Yet emotional distance fits easily here. It hides behind schedules. It excuses itself through responsibility. It calls itself sacrifice. He worked constantly. Meetings replaced conversations. Achievements replaced time. No one questioned it. Success always receives understanding. She adjusted without complaint. She learned which moments to interrupt and which to swallow. She learned how to wait without asking when waiting would end. This was not neglect dressed as cruelty. This was neglect dressed as ambition. 3. From the outside, he provided everything. Comfort, stability, protection. From the inside, something essential went missing. Presence. Love does not disappear all at once. It thins slowly. It fades between unanswered questions and postponed promises. At first, she believed patience would restore closeness. Then she believed silence would keep peace. Eventually, silence became habit. Tonight's dinner represented everything he had built: influence, respect, control, yet none of it could fill the space beside him. That is the tension holding this story together. Not whether he loved her, not whether she stayed loyal, but whether love can survive when one person keeps growing outward while the other keeps folding inward. This is where power begins to weaken, not through confrontation, not through loss, but through quiet realization. Silence does not last forever. It waits, it observes, it gathers meaning. For a long time, hers stayed quiet because it had to. Because peace felt safer than truth. Because love felt easier when it asked for less. But silence carries weight, and when it finally moves, it does not raise its voice. It chooses timing. That phone buzz was not loud. It did not interrupt the room. It did not demand attention. Yet, it changed the balance, because it reminded her of something she had set aside. Not money, not power, choice. In that single moment, she realized she was no longer trapped by patience. She was no longer waiting for permission. She was no longer measuring her worth by his availability. And he felt it, not through words, not through accusation, through distance. For the first time, his certainty wavered. For the first time, the room no longer moved with him. That is the question at the heart of this story. What happens when the person who stayed silent remembers their voice? What happens when love is forced to face truth without noise? What happens when control meets calm resolve? This story is not about revenge. It is not about exposure. It is not about winning. It is about what remains when silence speaks clearly. Stay with us, because what follows is not dramatic. It is not rushed. It is honest. And honesty changes everything. The dinner existed for one reason: to affirm who held influence. The room reflected it clearly. Long tables arranged with precision. Soft lighting chosen to flatter faces already used to attention. Conversations stayed measured, never careless. Every laugh arrived on cue. This was not a place for uncertainty. Eamon Cade belonged here in a way few people ever do. When he entered the room, greetings followed naturally. Not eager, not desperate, respectful. Executives leaned slightly closer when he spoke. Partners waited for his reaction before forming their own. Control lived in his stillness. He did not rush his words. He did not repeat himself. He listened just enough to remind others he could decide the outcome of their futures. Deals hovered between sentences. This dinner marked another victory, a merger completed quietly. Influence extended without noise, the kind of success built through patience and leverage. Around the table, people adjusted themselves to his presence. Shoulders straightened, voices softened. Attention followed him even when he remained silent. Beside him sat Neria. She matched the room without competing with it. Her posture calm, her expression composed. She spoke only when spoken to, and even then briefly. Some assumed she preferred it this way. Others barely noticed her at all. She passed plates when needed. She smiled when addressed. She listened to stories she already knew by heart. Her role was clear: not to lead the room, not to interrupt momentum, to exist beside it. And yet, the longer the evening stretched, the clearer the contrast became. He commanded attention effortlessly. She learned how to disappear politely. That contrast sat quietly between them, untouched, waiting. Power shaped how people moved in this room, not through commands, through awareness. Everyone understood where they stood. Seats closer to Eamon carried weight. Seats farther away listened more than they spoke. Conversations adjusted depending on who leaned in. No one explained the order. No one needed to. Names were mentioned carefully. Projects were praised without sounding hopeful. Compliments stayed subtle, designed to signal alignment rather than admiration. This dinner rewarded restraint. Those who belonged here knew how to wait. They knew when to speak and when silence served better. Approval traveled quietly, passed through glances and pauses rather than declarations. Eamon navigated it with ease. He did not dominate discussions. He guided them. A raised eyebrow ended debates. A brief nod granted permission. People watched his reactions more than his words. That attention carried pressure, not sharp, persistent, the kind that asked everyone to perform without being asked. Naraya felt it too. She sensed expectations pressing from all sides, even when no one addressed her directly. Partners smiled politely, then returned their focus to Eamon. Questions reached him first. Praise followed his lead. Her presence registered as an extension, not an individual. She answered politely when spoken to. She acknowledged compliments with grace. She never lingered in conversation long enough to disrupt the flow. That restraint earned approval. In rooms like this, comfort comes from blending in. Yet, blending in requires cost. The longer the evening continued, the more clearly the structure revealed itself. Power rested with him. Visibility followed power. Silence protected the order, and she maintained it perfectly. Eamon never raised his voice. He did not need to. Control showed in the way conversations curved toward him, in how people paused before responding, as if measuring their words against his approval. He listened with calm focus, offering brief replies that carried weight beyond their length. A single comment redirected discussion. A short pause signaled disagreement. People adjusted instantly. This was the power he carried into every room. Not force. Certainty. He sat comfortably, one hand resting against the table, the other lifting his glass at precise moments. He acknowledged success without celebrating it. He accepted praise without reacting to it. Everything about him suggested balance. Beside him, Naraya remained composed. She did not mirror his gestures. She did not seek attention. She occupied space quietly, maintaining presence without assertion. When eyes passed over her, she did not react. When someone addressed her briefly, she answered with courtesy, then withdrew. Her silence did not signal weakness. It signaled adaptation. Over time, she had learned the rhythm of these gatherings. When to smile, when to listen, when to let conversation move past her without interruption. Her role supported the image he presented. From the outside, they appeared united, balanced, polished. Yet beneath that image, the contrast sharpened. His control expanded outward. Her voice narrowed inward. No one commented on it. No one needed to. This balance had become accepted, and acceptance often hides imbalance. As the evening progressed, his confidence remained steady. Hers stayed restrained. The distance between them existed quietly, measured not in words but in unspoken understanding. This was how power lived publicly, confident, controlled, untouched, until something interrupted the rhythm. The room looked flawless. Crystal caught the light softly. Plates arrived in careful sequence. The skyline framed the evening like a promise of permanence. Everything suggested success earned and secured. Yet comfort did not reach everyone equally. Guests leaned toward confidence, toward certainty, toward the person shaping outcomes. Smiles stayed measured. Conversations stayed safe. Nothing here invited vulnerability. The beauty of the setting made distance easier to ignore. Naraya noticed details others missed. The way partners glanced past her before speaking. The way pauses formed when she entered a conversation, then smoothed over quickly. The way her presence mattered only as long as it reinforced his. She did not resent it. She understood it. This was how influence arranged people. This was how hierarchy protected itself. Smooth surfaces discouraged questions. Still, something pressed gently against her awareness. Not discomfort sharp enough to name. Not dissatisfaction loud enough to disrupt. Just a quiet sense of separation. Across the table, Eamon continued navigating the evening with practiced ease. He smiled when required. He nodded at the right moments. He carried the room without appearing to try. That effortlessness deepened at the contrast. He belonged fully. She belonged conditionally. The room reflected success perfectly. It did not reflect connection. As courses cleared and glasses refilled, admiration mingled with something harder to place. The evening impressed. It also confined. For those watching closely, the distance between power and presence became impossible to miss. This was the world they shared publicly. Elegant, controlled, impressive, and quietly incomplete. Before the dinners, before the attention, before people adjusted their voices when he entered a room, there was a smaller version of his life. They met when everything still required effort. Eamon did not arrive with certainty then. He carried ideas instead, long conversations, restless ambition. He worked late, not because he ruled anything, but because he hoped to build something worth keeping. Naria noticed him without trying to, not because he stood out, because he listened. They crossed paths often enough for familiarity to form. Coffee shared without ceremony, walks that stretched longer than planned, conversations that drifted from plans to doubts without warning. He spoke openly with her, about the pressure to succeed, about the fear of falling short, about how much depended on choices no one else saw. She never treated those worries as weakness. She treated them as honesty. Their connection grew slowly, not dramatic, not rushed, built through time spent side by side rather than promises made aloud. She believed in him when belief still felt fragile, not because of where he was going, because of how he showed up. He remembered small details. He waited for her to finish speaking. He valued her presence without measuring its usefulness. That was the version of him she fell in love with, before contracts replaced conversations, before responsibility became an excuse, before success changed the shape of his attention. Back then, they built closeness through patience, not money, not comfort. Time. Section 3. Before the Wealth Part 2. Early romance and shared struggle. Their early love did not announce itself. It settled in quietly. Jednact. They learned each other through routine. Late evenings spent reviewing ideas at a small table. Shared meals prepared without planning. Laughter filling spaces where worry once sat. Money stayed tight. Time felt stretched. Progress moved slowly. Yet closeness felt easy. When Eamon doubted himself, Naria steadied him without trying to fix him. She listened more than she advised. She asked questions that helped him hear his own answers. He noticed her care in small ways, the way she stayed awake while he worked, the way she celebrated minor progress as if it mattered, the way she believed without asking for proof. They supported each other through uncertainty, through setbacks, through moments when giving up felt reasonable. He spoke often about building something meaningful. She never rushed him. She trusted his pace. Romance lived in those details, in shared exhaustion, in quiet encouragement, in knowing someone stayed even when nothing promised return. They did not measure love by milestones. They measured it by effort. He learned to lean on her. She learned to stand beside him without losing herself. Their bond strengthened through patience rather than excitement. Those early days taught them how to choose each other when circumstances offered little reward. Before wealth complicated everything, love grew in simplicity, and that simplicity made it strong. Naria believed in Eamon before belief became easy, not because his plans sounded impressive, not because success felt guaranteed. She believed because she saw how he handled uncertainty. Dvanact. When ideas failed, he adjusted instead of blaming. When doors closed, he studied why. He did not hide disappointment, yet he did not let it define him. He stayed curious. He stayed grounded. That consistency mattered to her. He never asked her to carry his ambition. He invited her into it. He spoke as if her thoughts mattered, even when outcomes remained unclear. Decisions felt shared, not dictated. She trusted him because he trusted her presence. There were moments when progress stalled. Bills waited. Opportunities slipped away. Those moments tested patience, yet they also revealed character. He did not grow distant under pressure. He did not withdraw into himself. He stayed engaged. That is what made her belief steady, not his drive. his openness. She felt valued without being useful, seen without needing to prove worth. In those days, love felt mutual, balanced, safe. She imagined a future built slowly, shaped by effort rather than display. She imagined growth without losing closeness. She imagined success would expand their world, not narrow it. That belief held long after circumstances changed. Even when his time thinned, even when attention shifted, she remembered who he was when no one watched. That memory carried her through years of quiet adjustment. It kept her hopeful longer than it should have. Back then, love moved at its own pace. No schedules dictated closeness. No achievements interrupted connection. Time felt shared, not borrowed. They learned each other through presence, through ordinary moments given full attention, walks without destination, conversations that drifted without urgency, silence that felt comfortable rather than heavy. Nothing about their bond relied on comfort or image. It relied on choice. They chose to sit together when work piled up. They chose honesty when fear appeared. They chose patience when outcomes stayed uncertain. That choice shaped their connection more than any later success ever could. When wealth arrived, it changed access. It changed visibility. It changed responsibility. It did not create love. Love already existed. What wealth did change was how time was spent, how often attention drifted, how easily closeness postponed itself. Looking back, Neraya understood something clearly. Their strongest moments happened when time felt abundant, even though resources were not. That contrast mattered, because it revealed a truth many people recognize too late. Love grows when time is protected. Distance forms when time is traded away. Before success complicated everything, they held each other without counting minutes. That memory became the quiet foundation of everything that followed, and it is why this story still matters. Before we continue, pause for a moment. Do you believe early love feels stronger than love shaped by later success? Comment your thoughts below. Like this video if you believe time matters more than display. Subscribe to Lord of Hearts for stories that honor connection over status. Section 4. When Success Replaced Presence, Part 1. Work stepped into the space love once held. 14. Success did not arrive loudly. It entered through calendars. Meetings extended into evenings. Messages waited on screens. Deadlines reshaped days that once belonged to both of them. Eamon's attention narrowed as responsibility widened. He remained kind. He remained focused. He became busy. At first, Neraya adjusted without complaint. She understood pressure. She respected ambition. She told herself this phase would pass once stability settled. It rarely does. Conversations shortened. Meals shifted later. Plans changed without warning. When work called, it always came first, and she stepped aside without being asked. Not because she wanted to, because it felt easier. Connection faded through absence rather than conflict. No raised voices, no harsh words, just fewer shared moments to hold on to. Eamon spoke often about progress, about obligations, about how everything he did supported their future. His intentions stayed good. His presence grew scarce. That absence carried weight. Neraya noticed it in small ways, waiting longer for eye contact, repeating herself more often, feeling conversations end before they began. She did not confront him. She adapted. Work replaced closeness, quietly and completely. What once felt temporary became routine. And routines shape distance faster than disagreements ever could. Apologies became familiar. They arrived softly, without resistance. "I'm sorry I'm late. I'll make it up to you. Just one more call." Each apology sounded sincere, and each one asked for patience. Eamon never dismissed her feelings. He acknowledged them quickly, often between tasks. His words carried care, yet his time stayed elsewhere. The apology ended the moment, not the pattern. Neraya learned how to accept them gracefully. She nodded. She smiled. She said it was fine, because arguing felt heavier than waiting. Attention once came freely. Now it appeared as promise rather than presence. He reassured her with plans for later, for weekends not yet shaped, for trips postponed again. Those plans rarely arrived intact. She stopped asking follow-up questions. She stopped reminding him what he missed. She accepted explanations before disappointment had time to form. Apologies filled the space where attention once lived. They softened absence without solving it. Over time, she noticed how easily apologies replaced effort, how quickly they smoothed over moments that once mattered, how often she adjusted her expectations instead of expressing them. There was no cruelty in it, just imbalance. He remained devoted to progress. She remained devoted to keeping peace. And peace required quiet. That quiet settled between them, steady and unchallenged. It did not demand resolution. It asked for endurance, and she gave it. Silence did not come naturally to Nariah. She learned it. At first, she spoke when something felt off. She asked simple questions. She shared small disappointments. Nothing accusatory, nothing sharp, just honest attempts to stay close. Those moments rarely led to change. They led to reassurance, to explanations, to promises delayed. Over time, she noticed something important. Speaking required energy. Silence required adjustment. And adjustment kept the day moving. She began choosing her moments carefully. She measured whether a thought deserved interruption. She weighed her needs against his schedule before giving them voice. Most did not pass the test. She told herself understanding mattered more than insistence. That support meant stepping back when pressure rose. That love meant not adding weight to someone already carrying much. Silence became practical. It protected him from guilt. It protected her from disappointment. Yet it also reshaped her presence. She laughed softer. She waited longer. She stopped filling gaps in conversation. She became skilled at listening without responding. No one noticed the change immediately. That is how silence works. It blends in. It looks like calm. It feels like control. But inside, something narrowed. Her thoughts stayed unspoken. Her needs stayed unnamed. Her presence reduced itself to what fit comfortably beside his priorities. She did not vanish. She minimized. And that difference mattered more than anyone realized. Nothing about Eamon's behavior appeared harsh. He remained respectful. He spoke gently. He showed concern when she looked tired. From the outside, their relationship still looked steady. That is what made the distance harder to explain. There were no moments to point to, no single event to confront. Neglect arrived through consistency, not impact. Through what stopped happening rather than what started. He forgot small things. He missed subtle cues. He listened halfway while thinking ahead. None of it felt intentional. Yet intention does not measure effect. Nariah felt the absence most during ordinary moments. When she wanted to share something small. When she needed reassurance without asking. When silence felt heavier than words. She stopped expecting him to notice. That shift carried quiet grief, not loud enough to demand change, not sharp enough to cause conflict, just present. She understood his world demanded focus. She respected his discipline. She admired what he built. That admiration kept her patient longer than it should have. But patience has limits, even when love remains. Neglect without cruelty teaches a painful lesson. You can feel lonely beside someone who means well. You can miss someone who never leaves. You can love deeply and still feel unseen. That recognition did not arrive suddenly. It settled slowly, and once it settled, it stayed. The dinner resumed, as if nothing had shifted. Plates arrived in smooth sequence. Glasses refilled without pause. Laughter returned at familiar moments, light and practiced. Conversations folded back into place, careful to maintain ease. From the outside, the room looked unchanged. Eamon settled back into his seat with the same calm posture. His presence steadied the table. People leaned in again. Stories continued. Compliments landed where expected. Appearances held. Nariah returned beside him quietly. She matched the rhythm without effort. She smiled when addressed. She listened without interrupting. No one noticed anything different about her behavior. That was the problem. Inside, distance had already taken root. She heard voices as sound rather than meaning. She watched interactions as if from a step removed. Familiar exchanges felt routine, no longer engaging. She remained attentive, yet detached. The room pressed forward with momentum. Stories overlapped. Laughter rose and fell. Success filled the space easily. Like air everyone assumed would always be there. Naraya felt separate from it, not excluded, not unwelcome, just elsewhere. She noticed how quickly attention returned to Eamon when he spoke, how easily people aligned themselves with his reactions, how effortlessly the room followed his lead. She sat beside him without leaning in. Time slowed. Moments stretched longer than expected. The evening seemed suspended, held together by repetition rather than excitement. This was the calm before something changed. No signs announced it. No tension showed on faces. Yet the stillness carried weight. The table waited without knowing what for. Conversation moved easily around the table. Stories followed familiar paths. Recent wins, future plans. Subtle praise exchanged between people who understood influence. Laughter arrived on time, never too loud, never misplaced. Everything sounded right. Eamon participated with ease. He responded thoughtfully. He smiled at the right moments. His presence guided the pace without effort. People mirrored him. When he leaned back, voices softened. When he leaned forward, attention followed. No one questioned it. This rhythm had been practiced many times before. Naraya watched it happen. She recognized the pattern. She had seen it shape countless evenings. The same gestures, the same pauses, the same unspoken agreement to keep things smooth. She played her role without thought. A polite smile, a brief response, a nod of acknowledgement. Appearances required maintenance. Inside, she felt the gap widen, not suddenly. Gradually, the conversations felt distant, even when directed at her. Words reached her ears without settling. She noticed how often people spoke past her rather than to her. How easily attention returned to Eamon once courtesy had been satisfied. No one meant harm. This was simply how the room functioned. She felt herself retreat further into observation, listening without investment, smiling without engagement, remaining present without feeling connected. The evening carried on, steady and controlled. The room looked full. She felt separate. Naraya felt present without being involved. Her body remained at the table. Her attention drifted elsewhere. She noticed details she once ignored, the way conversations looped without depth, the way laughter filled space rather than shared meaning, the way time stretched when nothing demanded honesty. She responded when addressed, yet her replies felt automatic, polite, measured, complete enough to end exchange quickly. Inside, she had already stepped back. She remembered earlier versions of herself at dinners like this, more engaged, more hopeful, still believing proximity meant closeness. That belief no longer held. She watched Eamon speak with confidence, his ease unchanged. He moved through topics smoothly, never sensing the distance beside him. His focus stayed outward, anchored to momentum rather than connection. She did not resent him for it. She simply stopped expecting him to notice. That realization brought a calm she had not anticipated, a steady clarity. She no longer waited for shared glances or quiet reassurance. She no longer measured the evening by how often he turned toward her. She existed independently within the same space. The room continued its performance. Appearances remained intact. Nothing suggested disruption. Yet, internally, something settled into place, a quiet acceptance. She understood she was no longer part of the center. She was an observer, not a participant. The distance felt real, even if invisible. That distance sharpened awareness. She felt the moment approaching without knowing its form. The table remained steady, but she had already stepped away. The evening slowed without anyone noticing. Courses cleared. Glasses lingered half full. Conversations softened as topics repeated themselves. The room settled into a comfortable rhythm, confident nothing would shift it. This was the pause before change. Eamon leaned back, listening more than speaking now. His expression remained composed. His posture suggested ease. The room mirrored him, relaxed and secure in its structure. Nothing hinted at tension. Naraya sat still beside him. Her hands rested calmly. Her face showed no strain. She appeared exactly as expected. Inside, she waited without anticipation, not for a signal, not for permission, just aware. The city lights beyond the glass felt distant. The room existed in its own controlled space, untouched by the world outside. People here believed stability lasted as long as power held. The table felt insulated. That belief shaped everything. Naraya felt a quiet certainty settle. Not urgency, not fear, just readiness. She did not know what would interrupt the calm, only that the calm could not last. Silence stretched between courses. Someone laughed softly. Another voice filled the gap. The room breathed together. Eamon glanced down the table, satisfied. Control remained intact. Appearances held. For a brief moment, everything aligned. Then something small pressed against that balance. Unnoticed at first, unremarkable. The kind of moment rooms like this underestimate. The interruption waited its turn. The vibration reached her again. Soft, brief, unapologetic. It pressed against the stillness she had learned to carry. Naraya did not move right away. She had spent years mastering restraint. Reacting never helped. Waiting often did. So she stayed still, eyes forward, breath steady. The table continued its rhythm. Eamon spoke again, finishing a thought with ease. A few smiles followed. Glasses lifted. Control appeared untouched, yet the sound had already landed. The phone rested near her hand, not hidden, not displayed, simply there. Its presence felt heavier than any conversation happening around it. It buzzed once more. This time, Eamon paused. Not enough to draw attention. Just a fraction. A breath held slightly longer than usual. His gaze shifted, then returned to the room. The moment passed, yet something loosened. Naraya felt it. She stood calmly. The chair moved without urgency. No scraping, no sudden gestures. She excused herself with a nod that required no response. She walked away from the table with purpose, not speed. The balcony doors opened easily. Cooler air met her skin. The city below continued its quiet movement, unaware of the change unfolding above it. She looked at her phone. One message. No build-up. No explanation. Just clarity. You no longer need permission. The words settled immediately. They did not surprise her. They confirmed something she had always known. The message carried weight without spectacle. Years earlier, long before public dinners and controlled rooms, Naraya's grandmother made a quiet decision. She believed love thrived best beside independence. She believed security protected choice. So she placed everything into a trust and named Naraya as its sole holder. No conditions tied to marriage, no shared authority, no deadlines demanding action. 24. The trust waited. Naraya accepted it without ceremony. She signed papers once. She filed them away. She never spoke of it again. Not because she felt ashamed, because she felt certain. She believed partnership meant standing together by choice, not necessity. She believed revealing it too soon would shift balance before love settled into trust. She wanted their bond built on time and effort, not leverage. So she kept it quiet. As Eamon's world grew louder, the trust stayed silent. As her role narrowed, it remained untouched. She never used it as protection. She never used it as warning. It existed as proof of selfhood. Tonight's message did not create independence. It confirmed it. The trust had reached a new stage. Access expanded. Authority clarified. Nothing required approval from anyone else. She stood there, phone resting lightly in her hand, understanding something clearly. Freedom does not announce itself with noise. It arrives when you realize you already have options. She did not feel anger. She did not feel triumph. She felt steady. Independence did not feel like escape. It felt like grounding. Standing alone on the balcony, Naraya understood the difference clearly. Independence did not mean leaving. It did not mean proving anything. It meant knowing she could stay without shrinking. For years, she confused patience with loyalty. She believed endurance protected love. She thought silence kept harmony. The message shifted that understanding. Independence meant choice without fear. It meant staying because she wanted to, not because she needed stability. It meant her presence carried value, regardless of how much attention it received. She realized something else, too. She had never asked Eamon to change because she did not want to risk what they had. Independence removed that fear. Truth felt safer when survival no longer depended on agreement. She did not feel tempted to confront him. She did not feel driven to expose anything. She felt clear. The trust had never been about money. It had been about permission. Permission to speak honestly. Permission to stop adjusting herself to fit spaces that grew tighter. She did not plan an exit. She planned presence. Whether that presence would be shared or solitary no longer scared her. That clarity carried strength. Naraya never spoke about the trust because she wanted truth to exist without advantage. She did not want love shaped by knowledge of safety nets. She did not want decisions softened by hidden assurances. She believed connection deserved honesty built on presence, not protection. Keeping it quiet felt respectful. She wanted Eamon to choose her freely, without influence or obligation. She wanted their life together to stand on shared effort, not quiet leverage. So she stayed silent. That silence was never weakness. It was trust. Over time, silence took on another role. It became habit. It became comfort. It became the way she held space for him while letting parts of herself wait. Tonight, the message reminded her something important. Silence serves love only until love stops listening. The trust did not change who she was. It reminded her who she had always been. She returned to the table calm, not resolved to act, not eager to reveal anything. She carried clarity instead of urgency. That clarity shifted how she sat, how she listened, how she existed beside him. She no longer felt smaller. The power in that realization did not come from money. It came from self-respect. Before we continue, take a moment. What does freedom mean to you? Is it leaving when things feel heavy? Or staying without losing yourself? Comment below with your thoughts. Like this video if you believe independence strengthens love. Subscribe to Lord of Hearts for stories where dignity leads the way. The balcony door opened quietly behind her. Eamon stepped out without urgency. He did not rush. He did not ask questions right away. He stood beside her, leaving a small space between them, as if sensing something delicate lived there. The city stretched below, distant and steady. "You all right?" he asked. His voice stayed even, familiar, the same tone he used in meetings when he wanted clarity without pressure. Naraya nodded once. "I am." He studied her face longer than usual, not searching for anger, searching for distance. "You seemed far tonight," he said. She let the words settle before answering. No defense, no correction. "I have been," she replied. The honesty surprised him, not because of what she said, but because of how easily it came. He exhaled slowly. "You didn't say anything." "I stopped," she said. "It didn't feel useful." That landed softly, yet it shifted the space between them. Eamon leaned his hands against the railing, looking out rather than at her. Silence followed, not tense, measured. "I thought things were fine," he said. "You never complained." "I wasn't fine," she replied. "I was adjusting." He turned then, confusion crossing his expression. "Adjusting to what?" "To not needing much," she said. "To waiting. To understanding." The words stayed gentle. No accusation lived inside them. Eamon frowned slightly. "I gave you everything." She met his eyes. Calm, steady. "You gave resources," she said. "Not presence." The sentence hung between them, clear and undeniable. For the first time that evening, his confidence faltered. Eamon did not respond right away. He stayed facing the city, hands steady on the railing. The pause felt deliberate, not defensive. He was listening, even if he did not yet understand. "I never meant to leave you out," he said. "Everything I did was for us." "I know," Naraya replied. "That's why I didn't fight you." He turned slightly, brow tight. "Then why does it feel like I failed?" She considered her words carefully. Not to protect him. To stay honest. "Because intention and impact are different," she said. "You meant well." I felt alone. The space between them held that truth without resistance. "I didn't want to add pressure," she continued. "You carried enough already, so I learned how to carry less of myself." His jaw tightened. "You should have told me." "I did," she said calmly. "At first. Later, I stopped because it didn't change anything." That landed heavier than anger ever could. Eamon looked down, then back at her. "I thought stability mattered most." "It does," she said. "But stability without connection feels empty." He nodded slowly, absorbing the words rather than pushing back. "I wasn't asking for grand gestures," she added. "I needed time, attention, the version of you who used to sit with me without checking anything else." The city lights reflected faintly in his eyes. For the first time, he looked uncertain, not about business, but about himself. "I didn't realize I replaced being there with providing," he said. She held his gaze. "I didn't realize how much I disappeared trying to make that enough." Neither raised their voice. Neither stepped away. The tension stayed contained, precise and real. Eamon's confidence had always been quiet. It lived in certainty, in decisions made without hesitation, in outcomes he could predict. This moment offered none of that. He rubbed his hands together once, a small gesture she had seen only when something unsettled him. He looked back toward the dining room, then returned his focus to her. "I didn't see it," he said. "I thought you were okay." "I looked okay," Naraya replied. "I learned how." That answer struck deeper than accusation. He exhaled slowly. "I kept telling myself you understood." That silence meant agreement. 29. Silence meant endurance, she said, not consent. The distinction caught him off guard. He straightened, as if preparing to defend himself, then stopped. The instinct passed. What replaced it was uncertainty. For the first time, he questioned his assumptions. "I thought being reliable was enough," he said. "That building something solid would protect us." "It protected structure," she replied, "not closeness." Eamon nodded. Once. His shoulders lowered slightly, the way they did when he let go of control rather than tightened it. "I don't know how I missed this," he admitted. Naraya didn't answer immediately. She watched him, not with anger, but with clarity. "You didn't miss it," she said. "You deprioritized it." The truth landed cleanly. He swallowed. "And you stayed." "I did," she said, "until staying meant losing myself." That was the crack. Not dramatic, not loud, but real. Eamon looked at her then, truly looked, as if seeing the cost for the first time. His authority did not vanish, but it no longer shielded him. For the first time that night, power did not protect him from consequence. Neither of them moved closer. Neither stepped away. The space between them stayed intact, not cold, not distant, simply honest. Words had done their work. Nothing more needed forcing. Eamon rested his forearms against the railing again. His posture no longer carried command. It carried thought. "I don't want to lose you," he said quietly. Naraya did not answer right away, not because she doubted his sincerity, because she weighed what the words meant now. "I don't want to lose myself," she replied. That balance mattered. He nodded slowly. "I don't know how to fix this." "I'm not asking you to fix anything tonight," she said. "I needed you to hear me." He looked at her again, and this time his attention did not drift. No interruptions waited. No priorities competed. "I hear you," he said. The words felt different now, less assured, more present. They stood together in silence, not as punishment, not as avoidance, but as acknowledgement. The city continued below them, steady and indifferent. The dinner inside moved on without them. For the first time that evening, neither felt the need to perform. Eamon broke the quiet gently. I thought power meant control. Neraya met his eyes. It means responsibility. He accepted that without resistance. The tension did not dissolve. It settled, held in place by restraint rather than reaction, by truth rather than volume. This conversation did not promise resolution. It created accountability, and that was enough to change what came next. They returned to the table together. Nothing about their entrance drew attention. No pause in conversation, no lifted brows. The room absorbed them easily, as it always had. Yet something was different. Eamon took his seat with the same composed posture, but his attention no longer floated outward. He listened longer than usual. He responded slower. His words carried less certainty, more care. People noticed, not consciously, instinctively. The rhythm shifted. Conversations hesitated before moving forward. A partner waited a fraction longer for approval. A laugh came late. Control did not disappear. It softened. Eamon glanced toward Neraya more than once, not to check appearance, but to check presence. He stayed seated through exchanges he once would have led. He allowed silence to exist without filling it. That restraint felt unfamiliar. Across the table, eyes adjusted. People sensed space where command once lived. No one challenged him. No one stepped out of line. Yet certainty no longer ruled the room. Neraya remained calm beside him. She did not reclaim attention. She did not withdraw. She existed fully, without effort. The difference between them felt subtle but undeniable. Power still surrounded Eamon. Authority still followed his name. But something essential had shifted. He no longer moved the room without thought. And rooms like this always notice when that happens. The room responded before anyone named it. A question meant for Eamon hovered unanswered longer than usual. Someone else filled the gap, then paused, uncertain. Another voice adjusted its tone, softer, careful not to overstep. People sensed change through pattern, not proof. They watched his pauses. They measured his silence. They noticed what no longer came automatically. Eamon no longer guided discussion with ease. He listened fully, sometimes too fully, as if weighing words rather than directing outcomes. His gaze stayed present, grounded, no longer scanning for advantage. That presence altered the balance. Partners exchanged brief looks, not concern. Curiosity. They felt the difference, without understanding its source. Control had not left the room, but it no longer dominated it. Neraya felt it too. She noticed how people addressed her more directly now, even if only slightly. A question held longer. A smile lingered. Her presence registered in ways it had not earlier, not because she demanded it, because the space allowed it. Eamon's authority once filled every opening. Now gaps appeared, small and brief, but real. In those gaps, others adjusted. No one challenged him openly. No one tested boundaries. Yet certainty loosened its grip. Power had not vanished. It had recalibrated. And rooms built on hierarchy always respond to recalibration. Nothing dramatic announced the change. No raised voices, no public correction, no visible loss. That is how power often fades. Eamon did not lose respect in the room. He lost assumption. People no longer expected him to steer every moment. They waited, then moved forward on their own when guidance did not arrive. The shift stayed subtle. He declined to dominate a discussion he once would have closed quickly. He allowed another voice to finish without redirecting it. He nodded without signaling outcome. Those small choices mattered. They created space. In that space, the room learned how to function without constant direction. Not fully, not confidently, but enough to feel the difference. Neraya watched this unfold with clarity. She saw how influence depended on rhythm, on certainty, on the quiet expectation that someone would always lead. When that expectation loosened, the structure adjusted. Power did not break. It redistributed, Eamon remained composed, yet something essential no longer shielded him. His authority no longer moved ahead of him. It waited for him instead, and waiting changed everything. He glanced toward Naraya again, steady and thoughtful, not to claim reassurance, to remain grounded. For the first time, his presence served connection before command. That choice altered the room more than any declaration could have. Power slipped, not because it was taken, but because it was no longer centered on control. Control depends on alignment. As long as people believe in certainty, they follow it. As long as authority feels anchored, it holds. When connection weakens, control loses its foundation. Eamon felt that shift internally. He remained calm. He remained respected. Yet his focus no longer centered on command. His attention stayed divided, anchored beside him rather than ahead of him. 34. That change carried consequence. He no longer performed power automatically. He chose presence instead. In doing so, he surrendered something he once relied on without question. The room adjusted again. Conversations moved forward without waiting for his lead. Decisions formed without his immediate input. The structure held, but it did not revolve around him as it once had. No one noticed the exact moment control loosened. That is the nature of quiet consequence. Naraya felt the difference more clearly than anyone else. She saw how easily influence depended on internal balance. When connection faltered, certainty followed. Eamon's authority did not disappear. It changed shape. It no longer shielded him from accountability. It no longer filled every silence. It existed alongside vulnerability for the first time. That vulnerability did not weaken him. It exposed truth. Control without connection cannot sustain itself. Power without presence loses direction. And once that shift begins, nothing returns to how it was. The drive home passed without conversation. City lights slipped by the windows in steady rhythm. Traffic moved calmly. Nothing outside reflected the weight inside the car. Eamon kept both hands on the wheel. His focus stayed forward. Not tense, not distracted. Thoughtful. Naraya sat quietly beside him. This silence felt different from the ones before. It did not demand endurance. It did not ask her to shrink. It simply existed, open and honest. No apologies filled the space. No explanations rushed in. 35. The absence of words allowed reflection to surface. Eamon replayed the evening without defense. He noticed the moments he once dismissed, the pauses, the distance, the way control failed to replace connection. For the first time, he did not rush to resolve discomfort. He let it stay. Naraya watched the city blur past, feeling neither relief nor regret. She felt grounded. She did not rehearse what to say next. She did not plan outcomes. She allowed the quiet to do its work. The car slowed at a light. Eamon glanced toward her briefly, then back to the road. No reassurance passed between them. No promises offered, just acknowledgement. This silence marked the beginning of accountability. Not because anything had been fixed, but because nothing was being avoided. The house felt quiet when they entered, not empty, unclaimed. Eamon set his keys down carefully. He did not check his phone. He did not retreat into routine. He followed Naraya into the living space and sat across from her without prompting. "I don't want tonight to end without understanding," he said. His voice stayed steady, not defensive, not pleading. Naraya nodded. Understanding matters more than resolution. That frame changed everything. They spoke without urgency, without rehearsed lines. Each sentence came from presence rather than reaction. Eamon admitted what he had avoided naming. How easily work replaced attention. How providing became an excuse for absence. How silence misled him into comfort. "I thought quiet meant okay," he said. "I didn't ask enough." Naraya listened without interruption. She did not correct him. She let him finish. "I didn't want to fight for space," she said when it was her turn. "I wanted to be chosen without asking." The honesty stayed contained. No raised voices. No blame. Eamon absorbed her words fully. He did not justify. He did not minimize. "I see it now," he said. And I don't expect forgiveness. That mattered. They sat with the truth rather than rushing past it. Accountability formed not through promises, but through listening. This conversation did not close wounds. It opened awareness. Nerea did not offer forgiveness that night. Not because she wanted distance, because honesty required time. I need space to feel this fully, she said. Not to punish you, to stay true to myself. Eamon accepted that without resistance. He did not bargain. He did not rush reassurance. He did not ask for comfort he had not yet earned. That restraint mattered. For the first time, he listened without preparing a response. He stayed present, even when the truth felt uncomfortable. He allowed silence to remain without filling it. Listening became effort. And effort marked growth. He realized how often he had listened only to reply, how rarely he had listened to understand. That awareness stayed with him longer than any lecture could have. Nerea noticed the difference, not in words, in stillness. He stayed seated. He maintained eye contact. He did not reach for control. He allowed accountability to exist without defense. This was not reconciliation. It was recognition. Forgiveness would come later, or it would not. Either way, it would not be forced. What mattered now was presence, honest and uninterrupted. They ended the night without resolution, yet something essential had shifted. For the first time in a long while, listening felt like action. Change did not arrive with promises. It arrived quietly. Eamon began coming home earlier, not to explain himself, not to impress, but to be present. He sat without distraction. He listened without checking time. He asked questions and waited for answers. Nothing about it felt performative. Nerea noticed. Not immediately. Gradually. Consistency revealed itself through repetition, through moments that no longer required reminders, through choices made without being requested. He stopped assuming silence meant ease. He checked in, gently, without pressure. When she spoke, he stayed with her words instead of steering them. That effort mattered. Nerea did not rush toward closeness. She reclaimed space instead. Time alone. Old interests. Parts of herself she had paused rather than lost. She returned to routines that existed before compromise shaped her days. She did not explain herself. She honored herself. Eamon respected that distance. He did not interpret it as rejection. He understood it as restoration. They shared moments without expectation, simple meals, quiet evenings, conversations that ended naturally rather than abruptly. Romance did not lead. Presence did. The pace felt unfamiliar, slower than before, more intentional, less driven by fear of loss and more guided by choice. Love rebuilt itself through trust regained, not words exchanged. Nerea began choosing herself without announcement. She returned to interests she once set aside, not out of loss, but out of patience. Mornings became hers again. Walks without destination. Time spent creating rather than waiting. She did not ask permission. She did not explain her need. She remembered who she was when love did not require adjustment. That remembrance brought clarity. She spoke more openly, not loudly, but honestly. When something mattered, she said so. When something did not, she let it pass. Her voice felt grounded, no longer measured by fear of imbalance. Eamon noticed the shift, not because she demanded attention, because she no longer waited for it. Her confidence did not challenge him. It steadied him. He listened without interruption. He supported without directing. He allowed her autonomy to exist alongside their connection. That respect mattered more than reassurance ever could. Nerea realized independence did not weaken their bond. It strengthened it. Choice replaced endurance. Presence replaced obligation. She no longer shaped herself around his world. She carried her own. That identity reshaped how love felt. It felt mutual again. Balanced. Intentional. Romance returned slowly, guided by curiosity rather than memory. Conversations deepened without urgency. Touch felt intentional rather than habitual. She stayed because she wanted to, Not because she had nowhere else to stand. Romance did not rush back in. It waited. It appeared in small, unguarded moments, a shared look that lasted longer than before, a hand resting nearby without demand, laughter that came easily, without relief attached to it. Nothing felt forced. They relearned each other without expectation. Conversations wandered without agenda. Evenings ended without pressure to define progress. Eamon no longer tried to prove devotion. He showed it through presence, through consistency, through choosing her without being prompted. Nerea noticed the difference in how she responded. She did not brace herself for disappointment. She did not scan for absence. She stayed present. Romance grew from that safety, from knowing closeness no longer required sacrifice, from trusting moments to exist without urgency. They shared experiences without display. Simple routines felt meaningful again. A meal cooked together. A quiet night spent talking until sleep arrived naturally. Affection returned without performance. Not grand gestures. Not dramatic declarations. 40. Gentle attention. Touch carried intention now. Not reassurance. Not habit. Choice. They allowed space for uncertainty. Neither rushed to define what came next. They respected the process rather than the outcome. Romance deepened because it rested on truth rather than need. Love felt lighter. What rebuilt their love was not effort alone. It was choice. Nerea stayed because she wanted to, because presence felt mutual, because her identity no longer shrank to maintain peace. Dependence no longer shaped her decisions. Eamon understood that difference. He no longer assumed loyalty. He earned trust through consistency. He valued connection without trying to control it. That shift changed everything. Their relationship no longer rested on endurance. It rested on intention. They chose each other daily, not out of fear, not out of obligation, but out of respect. That choice felt steady, not fragile, not desperate, strong. They spoke openly about boundaries. They honored space without retreating from closeness. They built routines that supported connection rather than replaced it. Love became something they returned to willingly, not something they survived. The trust remained untouched, not as insurance, but as quiet proof of selfhood. It no longer represented escape. It represented freedom within commitment. Their story did not end with perfection. It ended with clarity. Before we close, take a moment. What stayed with you most from this story? Was it the silence? The choice? The slow return of presence? Share your takeaway in the comments. Like this video if you believe love should never require shrinking. Subscribe to Lord of Hearts for stories where dignity leads the way. This story was never about wealth. It was about attention. Power can build rooms like the one you witnessed tonight. It can command respect. It can shape outcomes, yet power alone cannot hold closeness. Presence does that. When attention drifts, love thins. Not suddenly, gradually, through missed moments, through postponed conversations, through silence mistaken for peace. This story reminds us of something simple and often ignored. Providing is not the same as showing up. Stability is not the same as connection. Love needs visibility. It needs to be felt, not assumed. Chosen, not relied upon. Protected through time, not replaced by intention. Nerea did not reclaim herself through confrontation. She reclaimed herself through clarity. She remembered that strength does not come from staying silent. It comes from knowing you can choose differently. Eamon did not lose power when he listened. He gained accountability. He learned that control fades when connection is missing, and leadership means presence before authority. These lessons apply far beyond this story. They live in everyday relationships, in quiet homes, in shared spaces where love waits to be noticed. Power often convinces people they are seen. It fills rooms. It draws attention. It creates movement. But power cannot replace presence. Presence listens when nothing is demanded. Presence notices before absence becomes routine. Presence stays even when outcomes remain uncertain. Eamon learned this the hardest way. His influence never vanished. His authority remained intact. What changed was his understanding. Power without presence created distance he did not intend. Control without connection left gaps he did not notice. Presence closed those gaps. It required slowing down, letting silence speak, allowing accountability to exist without defense. Naraya learned something equally important. Strength does not come from endurance alone. It comes from choice, from knowing you can stay without losing yourself, from speaking truth without needing to raise your voice. When presence returned, love followed, not as excitement, as steadiness. This story reminds us that power impresses others. Presence sustains relationships, and only one of them builds something that lasts. At its heart, this story is about choice. Not dramatic decisions made in public, quiet ones made in private. Naraya's strength did not come from walking away. It came from remembering she could, from knowing her worth did not depend on endurance or silence. She chose presence in her own life first. That choice changed everything. Eamon's growth did not come from losing status. It came from realizing leadership begins at home, from understanding that love requires visibility, not assumption. When both chose awareness over comfort, love found space to return, slowly, honestly, without pressure. This story asks something of all of us. Are we present where we claim to care? Do we listen when silence grows? Do we choose connection, even when success competes for attention? Strength is not loud. Love is not automatic. Presence is not optional. If this story stayed with you, let it guide how you show up. Like this video if you believe love should never require shrinking. Share it with someone who values presence over status. Subscribe to Lord of Hearts for stories that speak to dignity, choice, and quiet strength. And comment below the lesson that stayed with you. Your voice matters.